Hi, he's Mattyman.
And he's Vannyboy, and you're listening to The Rusty Playground, a Gen-X-centric podcast involving all things about Gen X, the coolest generation.
Woo! That's us. And one of the reasons why we were so cool is because, I should say we are so cool, is that we had some of the greatest entertainment in the history of humanity. Besides MTV, which we talk about all the time, besides, the after school specials and all these other things that were a big deal for us. We had,
and prior to us, you may have things like the Iliad or the Odyssey. We'll chuck that in the trash.
Screw that noise. No, we got real things like the Sword and the Sorcerer. So what we're going to talk about today is what many, myself included, consider the greatest year in movie history, certainly for Gen X, 1982. I'm going to list off a few of these movies that are on here, and I'll ask you if you've seen it, and I'll say a little thing about it, and then people will know. Okay, so if I mention it,
and if I haven't seen any of these,
shame on
probably
you.
shouldn't be hosting this podcast, but
Right.
Let's just go at it.
All right, so The Sword and the Sorcerer. It's of course, sword and sorcery movie that stars Richard Mall. There's actually a Riff Tracks version of it, and it's as stupid as it sounds. It has what's his name, Simon McCorkindale in it, and basically people besides Richard Mall, who everyone knows.
Richard Mall. That is ringing a bell. Who is Richard Mall?
Richard Mall was the 6'8" guy that played the bald in Night Court. He was the
are you kidding me? That guy?
Yeah. Okay. He's in it. He's the main sorcerer guy, evil demon that's pulled up from hell or whatever. And when he gets reborn, he has all this face makeup on. It's all slimy, and he turns to the camera and he looks like he just ate the worst lemon of all time. And in Riff Tracks, one of the comedians say, that's the same face I make when I ask for Coke and they say they only have Pepsi. And I always thought that was funny. But it's a cheap little movie, but there were a lot of these kind of movies being made at the time, like A Tour, which it was also on Mystery Science Theater, starring
is that Miles O'Keefe?
Miles O'Keefe. How much O'Keefe? Miles O'Keefe. Yeah.
Yes.
Who had
his abdominal muscles are so defined in that it's actually kind of gross.
Yeah, he's actually seems like a really cool guy. I think he played football. I always thought he was European. He just has a look of a European, but he's not. He's from Tennessee. But he had a very cool attitude about Mystery Science Theater, making fun of it. And, people asked him about it, and some people got mad, but he was like, nah, man. I mean, it was, just a stupid little movie we made. And if they can make people laugh, good on them. So he was cool about it. Next is one of my favorite hidden gems, is called Jekyll and Hyde Together Again. Have you ever seen that?
I remember the commercials for it. I may have seen part of it when it was on HBO. That would have been where it would have been shown probably 50 times a month.
Yeah. I think that
along with Beastmaster.
Yep, that's all. Actually, that was 1982 as well. So I guess they
you kidding me? All right.
No, But Jekyll and Hyde, it stars. Let me see if I can look this guy's name up, because he was on a show that was a ripoff of Saturday Night Live.
Oh, I know exactly the show. Fridays.
That's right.
Yes.
And
yes,
the guy that starred in it was one of my favorite. Probably my favorite on there is Mark Blankfield.
Yes, and he played a crazed pharmacist.
Yeah, that worked at a retirement home, and he would the big shtick was he's obviously drugged out of his mind, and he'd come in and give them their medicine, and he'd be like, oh, 1 for you and 2 for me, and 1 for you and 3 for me. He was taking all their medication.
Yeah, and he would freak out did you say that?
Yeah. So I'm sure any Gen Xers of a certain silly persuasion that's listening to this podcast is probably like, oh, I loved Fridays. That had the dude that was Jamaican, and he would always smoke the meat, and he's like, do we fry it? No. Do we eat it? No. Do we smoke it? Yeah. So it was it was like
Michael Richards came from there.
Yeah, that's right.
And so was Larry David.
I don't know if it's been so long since I've seen Fridays that I don't know how well it holds up, especially compared to Saturday Night Live around that time period. But
Well, SNL was in the crapper
yeah,
in like 81, 82 before they retooled it.
right. That was right when all the original not ready for primetime players left, right? So it was sort of in
Yep.
between that and Eddie Murphy and Joe Piscopo, which saved the show basically.
They had a different producer too. Lorne Michaels had left.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, they were definitely a gnat's hair away from being canceled for
Wow.
sure until Joe Piscopo and Eddie Murphy were on.
Yeah, that saved them.
Yep.
So Jekyll and Hyde together again.
As that guy from Fridays.
Yes, and I totally, absolutely can tell you without a doubt that you will, whoever's listening to this, you will find this movie hilarious. My wife, Christina, who was born in 1982, by the way, so she heralded in all these great movies. She is, you know, she was an English major at Davidson College, and she's about the canon and, you know, a bit snobby about how, and understandably so, how some of the old classics are treated. And, you know, this is treated very silly in a very silly way. So basically the guy's Dr. Jekyll, and he just absolutely is, you know, altruistic. He gives away all his time, and his hot girlfriend is like, no, you have to make some money. And then he creates what he thinks is a drug that will save people. What it turns out to be, it's cocaine. It's what it is. But it turns him into, you know, the super cool guy. It's I guess as akin to the Nutty Professor as it is Jekyll and Hyde. But
well, the Nutty Professor was just a comic take on
right,
the same story anyway.
Yes, and this is kind of in between those. Like whereas, you know, he becomes kind of a disco swinger guy whenever he takes it, snorts the stuff, and even at one point a golden medallion pops out of his chest.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very funny. So I was mentioned Christina because, you know, I thought watching it, no way she's going to like this, but because I didn't remember exactly what it was, but we watched it years and years ago, and she thought it was funny as hell. She's like, I really like that. This next movie, if you are a Gen Xer and you have not seen this movie, I'm not going to say turn this podcast off and go watch the movie. I'm going to say turn the podcast off and turn in your Gen X card. It is Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And truly, if you have not seen this movie and you're a Gen Xer, I really don't know how. I don't know how. Really.
I know. You probably were because you're like Mormon or Jehovah's Witness or something. I don't know.
Right. Your parents were probably like, I mean, you know, we were pretty young, 1982, until September. I was 12, and I was going to see a lot of these movies. But Fast Times, you know, Jeff Spicoli, you know, played beautifully by the not very beautiful person, Sean Penn, in what I consider his greatest role ever. He's a pothead. You know, he's like I said, Jeff Spicoli. It's got scene after scene after scene that's quotable by Gen Xers. You know, I'm not going to go through the whole thing. This isn't about that, but trust me, it was the first movie I think that actually had like, holy crap, that soundtrack. I've got to go buy it. And it wasn't done by, you know, John Williams kind of thing. It was like contemporary songs.
Precisely. It was in the same vein as like a WKRP in Cincinnati, in that you've got actual songs that are referencing bands by name. It's not like, oh, it's a generic sound alike, you know?
Right. Like the guy who's the scalper, and he's, you know, he names the bands, and at one point he's like, Cheap Trick, you know, your mama's all right, your daddy's all right, you're just a little weird. I mean, it had an incredible soundtrack, and if you go on Spotify, unfortunately, you can't listen to a lot of them. And there's a song by Don Henley called Love Rules, which I always loved, but I mean, I guess you just got to go find it in a record store because you can't find it anywhere else. Weird.
So I didn't see it at the theater, but I saw this movie. It was a rental, and it was on video disc, not laser disc, video disc.
Holy crap, Mr. Moneybucks! Wow.
I mean, had a video disc. Well, I didn't know, but my a friend Mike had that, and some little country store, for whatever reason, that was like one of their bread and butter things, was renting video discs.
That's wild. But good on Mike. I always, you know, Mike's awesome. So Mike, if you ever listen to this, love you, buddy. Cool guy.
Yeah. But those things were like terrible quality, because just like records, they would scratch and then they would skip. Even though it's in a little protective sleeve, you'd insert it and then the disc would pull out. But I don't know. Somehow They were not pristine, and they were not, like, once again, not Laserdisc. So the video quality was fair at best. But that's how I kind of saw that when he had it, and we watched it, and we were like,
Wow.
okay, yeah.
I imagine the compression rate on the video had to be pretty strong, or else it had to be like, 320 by 460, which kind of the TVs were, but still it's going to look like crap.
Well, it was like the discs were double-sided, so at some point it would prompt you to insert and then flip it. And I think it was done by like Quasar or Zenith or RCA, one of those.
Wow.
And that was their little version of what was going to happen. And then, of course, probably within 5 to 6 years, it was gone.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever seen anything on it. I think we had this on HBO and we recorded it on our VCR, and we just ruined it. We just watched it over and over and over again. Of course, there was one particular scene we watched over and over and over again, more than the others. And I think we know which one we're talking about.
I believe so.
Phoebe Cates coming out of the pool. Yes, that's in my mind for the rest of time, and I have no shame about that. So go see Fast Times. If you haven't seen it, definitely go see it. Or rent it or watch it, stream it, whatever you want to do. All right, next that came out, and I've noticed a theme here. There's we've already had 2 Mystery Science Theater / Riff Tracks movies, and now we have a third one. Megaforce. Have you ever seen it?
Yes, I have seen that.
Yep. I actually saw that at the movie theater. And Barry Bostwick plays this guy that's like the head of a super secret special ops Delta Force with high-tech equipment, unbelievable high-tech. When I say high-tech equipment, I mean like motorcycles with, a little, it's the guns on the front that, everything's shiny and looks like it's got metal on and chrome and stuff on it. It's pretty and silly.
These things fly too.
Yes, that's right. Famously at the end. Oh my God. It's
so horrible. Seamless. The effects.
I thought I was watching Endgame. It was incredible.
Yeah.
And also this had an actor named Michael Beck, who was everyone would recognize this guy. He was in Warriors. He was like the good looking young leader of the Warriors. He's not the guy that went, Warriors, come out and play. He's the leader of them. So they thought that this movie was going to be a franchise, like Star Wars kind of thing. And Barry Bostwick's walking around. They all walk around basically in.
Of course, this is guys who are all like doing a briefcase of blow. So
of course, yeah. I think Hal Needham made this movie. Yeah, he did. Hal Needham, who was a stuntman in the 70s and 80s, and he made Hooper and he made some other movies. But they thought this was going to be the next.
Wasn't he involved with Smokey and the Bandit?
He was involved in Smokey and the Bandit, which is a classic.
Right. So he had made, movies that did quite well.
Yeah. And
so they said, give this megalomaniac another shot. And he did. And that was it.
That was it. They thought this was going to be the big thing. They're walking around in kind of gold bodysuits. Barry Bostwick is always wearing a
headband.
Yeah. It looks like Loverboy. They all have this super feathered hair. And there's the 2 things to point out real quick about it. One is Michael Beck, like I said, he was in Warriors, and he said that Warriors made him a star, and then he did this movie, and it destroyed his career. And it's that bad.
I'm confused. Was it that movie or was it Xanadu?
Oh, it was Xanadu. That's right. So this was between that and Xanadu, wasn't it?
Yeah, this came after Xanadu.
Oh, he was lucky to get a job then. So good for him.
Yeah.
So
exactly. That one already ruined it. So then at that point, doing Megaforce is just par for the course.
Well, step up from Xanadu,
Yeah.
But it famously has at the end of it the flying motorcycle, and it could not be more green screen. And they obviously, instead of the motorcycle turning upside down like it's supposed to, they clearly do the camera, and he acts like he's being. It's as bad as it gets. He was mad at I don't know if it was Hal Needham he was mad at, but Barry Bostwick was mad at somebody one time. He was doing this scene with the woman who plays the main squeeze, who is she was the bald chick from Star Trek the motion picture.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and she's not bald in this, but as she and Barry Bostwick fall in love, they have this thing where they like kiss their
Oh, the
thumb
mm,
and then hold it up. I mean, in,
yeah.
in the riff tracks when they do it, Bill Corbett says, "You guys need a new thing." It always makes me laugh. But he was mad, so they do a scene where it's a silhouette of the woman Zara and Ace Hunter, Barry Bostwick, where it's just their silhouette, and he's standing there, and he's in his uniform. You suddenly see what he does is he has his hands on his hips, and he maneuvers it so his index finger is right where his pecker would be, and he lifts it up like he's got a boner, and it's
Oh,
for many years, people were like, "You did that on purpose," and he denied it. He's like, "No, it was a mistake," but it wasn't. He later admitted that it was on purpose, which was unprofessional, but quite funny.
well, the editor is responsible for leaving it in.
True. Maybe that was the only scene they had. So the next one is, you already mentioned, Beastmaster, which
Mark Singer.
other than Fast Times, these movies I've mentioned so far, not particularly great. Beastmaster as well, which is like another sword and sorcery kind of thing. Mark Singer later went on to play the protagonist in V, which was very successful miniseries. I loved.
Yes, it was an incredible miniseries and TV show.
Yeah, right. At best.
Yeah.
The next I have on my list.
Whoa, let's back up here for a second.
Yeah, Beastmaster. Sorry.
Yes. Now, was Beastmaster prior to Conan? Because I'm just wondering if like that was riding, the coattails, or if it just happened to be that same year.
They came out at the same year. Conan the Barbarian came out in 1982.
Seems to me a little suspect if you got Conan the Barbarian and then you have two other sword and sorcery type films.
Yes. Well, I think that as we go through the list, since you just mentioned that, it made me think about this. This was Dungeons and Dragons had come out and was already scandalous. And so it was also affecting society, movies. People were, in video games, stuff like that. People were afraid of it. It was basically like, pot was in the 50s or whatever. They were.
Oh, you mean it was like as if it was like the satanic scare a few years later in the 80s. People were freaked out, thinking, "Oh, you'll lose your mind," and you'll. And they made a TV movie like that.
That year in 1982
premise.
they made a movie that's on this list as well with do you remember the star of the movie?
Yes, Tom frickin' Hanks,
and it was called Mazes and Monsters. And if you look at the poster for Mazes and Monsters, they have 1992 Tom Hanks, not 1982 Tom Hanks, who still looks pretty much like a boy, and he has like his poofy hair like he did in Bosom Buddies, which was his first big thing where people saw him. Mazes and Monsters, as I mentioned, was an answer to people's fear of Dungeons and Dragons. So in this, they can't use Dungeons and Dragons. They call it Mazes and Monsters, and that's the name of the game they play. And Tom Hanks starts to lose his mind and be able to you can't tell what's reality and what's fantasy in his mind. And it's a cautionary tale made completely of bullshit.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I vaguely remember watching it on TV because it wasn't in a TV movie.
It was, yeah. I watched it. I didn't watch it because, can I find out about the dangers of Mazes and Monsters? No, I was like, hey, wonder if it's got any cool stuff in it.
Yeah, you're also thinking, hey, it's that guy from Bosom Buddies, which is, I think, still on the air.
He had not broken out yet, and he was probably
Splash was his big film breakthrough.
Yeah, right.
Wasn't that his breakthrough?
Ron Howard, yeah, Splash was his first big. Holy cow, this guy's good. Okay, I'll skip the next one on the list because we'll be talking about it. Creepshow. Did you ever see Creepshow?
Yes, loved Creepshow. Had that, watched it in the theater, saw it on HBO a gazillion times. Had the graphic novel version with the art by Bernie Wrightson.
Dude, we are twins. We're bosom buddies because I had all of those things and did the exact same thing you said.
Yep.
Hello, boys and girls. I love that guy.
Yeah, but the thing was the Creepshow guy. Did he speak? He wasn't like he was obviously inspired by EC Comics and the Crypt Keeper.
No, in the show, he did talk.
Yeah, on the yes, but that was Tales from the Crypt.
Right, and then but
Creep Show
was
was
the same. But
Creep Show was very similar, but it was not Tales from the Crypt. It was basically an homage to that. It was an anthology film. You know, with storylines that were very much like what you would have read in the old EC Comics, Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror kind of thing.
They had
George Romero, I believe, was the producer, if not one of the directors.
They had let's see if we can fire off some of the things they had. I remember they had of course, famously, they had Stephen King play a stupid redneck, and
Jordy Verrill, I believe.
And he just had bib overalls and stuff, and he finds where something had fallen out of the sky, the meteor, it cracks open, and he touches it, and it starts to grow a plant on it, and he touches it, and it kind of tingles or something, so he puts it in his mouth, and he's like, oh, and every time
what does he call it? What was his high-tech term for it? Meteor shit.
Yeah, right. And so wherever he scratches, it spreads like poison oak. So, but I mean, this is a plant that's growing out of him. It starts to grow everywhere. I remember that. All right, your turn. Remember another one?
There's the one with Ted Danson and
Leslie Nielsen.
Mm-hmm. I cannot remember the actress's name, but before we thought of like Naked Gun, although Airplane had already been out, so Leslie Nielsen was already kind of getting into like comedic acting, but in this he's just
straight up in
this. But that's the one where he's basically drowns them and they come back to life.
Yeah. They're zombies with seaweed on them. They got the one with the cockroaches. The guy's terrified of germs and stuff, and then he ends up having the billions of cockroaches pour out of his mouth or his chest. What was his mouth and chest? All of it, I guess.
Yeah. And I think the other one was they find at this university the
monster in a box.
Turns out there's a monster in a box still alive somehow.
That scared the crap out of me back then.
Yes. Yeah, that was just to be from some Arctic expedition, and it was left in the box. And after it kills the grad student, the guy realizes, oh, I'm going to, this is a great way to kill my overbearing wife.
All right, yeah.
But anyway.
So that was a good one, yep.
Yeah. It was basically I think it was just the 4 stories, but it was not anything that was being done at that time. And it was before there was Tales from the Dark Side in the mid 80s.
Yeah.
Before Tales from the Crypt in the late 80s going into the 90s. And trying to think what other anthologies were even around. It predates the Twilight Zone coming back. It predates Monsters. It predates Dark Room, which was a very short-lived horror anthology series hosted by James Coburn.
Wow. He's a real pussy.
Yeah, I know. Feminine is a good word.
James Coburn, Paul Lynde. I can't tell the difference. Another one on the list real quick was called Basket Case. And I remember this specifically because my brother and my late cousin Roddy used to go to theater, the Grandin Theater in Roanoke, which is like kind of one of those, like the Bird in Richmond, kind of, old kept up kind of things. And but they would have Rocky Horror Picture Show and that sort of thing.
Oh, and I'm supposed the organist at yours wasn't a heroin addict.
No, I think he was tripping on acid most of the time. But but Basket Case was yeah, you'd pay like $1 and they'd have like 6 movies in a row. And so they'd go to it. And Basket Case, when you bought the ticket for Basket Case, it came with a surgical mask to keep the blood off of you. So
what? That doesn't make any sense.
I know, but
it wasn't in 3D. I mean, how are they marked? What's the angle?
I don't know. The angle was they made a movie for $15, and then so they were just trying to get anybody to come see it.
Oh, that's the one that has has really bad stop motion animation in it.
Yeah, I think it's the baby there's a baby in the basket, and so that's the baby with fangs and stuff is a monster, I think. So Basket Case was I think there was a baby carriage. Yeah,
he was supposed to be the twin of the main guy in the movie who was how did it work out? We're not here for a plot summary.
Yeah, right. But I never saw it, but I
didn't see it at the time, but I remember seeing it a few years later when it was we'd rent all these grade Z movies from the video store.
Classic.
Yes.
The next one I will skip because we'll talk about that tonight. And then let me see, get onto the what's this E.T. the extraterrestrial? It's a big word. I don't know. You probably never heard of it anyway. But that one came out too, and kind of made some money and made a massive.
I think Aaron Spelling did that one.
Aaron what's his name? It
was Spell something.
Steven Spielberg.
Spellman.
Is that him? Anyway, I don't know.
All right, whatever it was.
Yeah, whatever it was. And so that made $1 zillion.
Every so often, I think that guy shows up and he does a little film tour at universities, you know.
Just to keep his
He was an
alive.
auteur. He was always just really, you know, cutting edge, but like you really had to appreciate it. He was definitely a cult director.
Yes. And of course, that was a game changer and affected the two movies we'll talk about in this podcast, probably the second half of this podcast as it's going. Next on my list, Star Trek The Wrath of Khan, which is inarguably the best Star Trek movie.
Yes.
And of course, if you don't know what that is, then screw you. Next on the list is The Toy, which is a movie starring Richard Pryor and Jackie Gleason. And the gist of it is that Jackie Gleason is a billionaire and his son is, they have a strained relationship. His son's probably like 12 or something. And he said, you can have any of the toys in this story, like literally buys out the whole store for him and his son to be there alone. Richard Pryor is in the store and his son finds him hilarious. So Jackie Gleason says, hey, I will pay you to be my son's toy. And through it, they learn to laugh, they learn to love. And of course his comedy brings them together. Did you ever see the Toy?
I saw that one on cable. That's gonna be most of the answers.
Most of these, yeah, right. I did actually see this one in the theater, and I don't know why, but I loved it. But Richard Pryor was on a roll at this point. One of the things,
did that one tank or did it do all right?
No,
I can't remember.
I think this one didn't do very well. Now he had Brewster's Millions. I'm not sure exactly when that one came out, but that one was, from what I understand, a pretty good hit. What I remember, one of the things I remember most about The Toy had nothing to do with Richard Pryor that I thought was funny. Jackie Gleason's name in it was U.S. something, like Ulysses S. Grant. Mm-hmm. It was Ulysses S. something, and then they called him U.S. That was his nickname. And but his very, very bleach blonde, deep South Maine squeeze called him "you ass" because her accent was so thick. So she'd be like, "Can you buy me something, you ass?" So she calls him "you ass" through the whole thing. I thought it was great.
And he probably corrects her every time, but
no, I think he only does it one time. Towards the end, he's like, "It's U.S." You know how Jackie Gleason is. Next on the list is, and as I was going through this and seeing these, I'm like, holy crap, I can't believe so many of these incredible movies. Some of them incredible, some of them are just great little fodder for Gen X at the time, I'm sure. Or, like our parents didn't go to see this next one, Swamp Thing.
Oh, Swamp Thing. Adrienne Barbeau, who was in Creepshow, came out that same year.
Yeah,
we were living through Barbeau mania.
Yeah, I think actually she was married to John Carpenter, who will be mentioned later in our next episode. I think she was married to John Carpenter at the time. I know that she was married to John Carpenter when they made Escape from New York.
Okay, well, presumably, yeah, they were still together, I believe, at that point.
Yeah. Now this was Wes Craven did this, and this is before Nightmare Before Christmas, Nightmare on Elm Street. So he wasn't, quite as well known. Obviously, I think his biggest claim to fame was he was, a co-writer or whatever on the original Friday the 13th, and so he was still building his way up. But I was very excited about Swamp Thing because I was a comic book collector and I had quite a few of the Swamp Thing comic books. And so, it was very, very rare at the time for any comic books to be made into an actual movie.
Yeah. In fact, I think the following year is when we get, no, it wasn't the following year. What year was it with Howard the Duck?
I think that was 86, 85, something around there.
Yeah, maybe 85. And that was a nail in the coffin for a few more years until Batman, saved it.
Right. Yeah. Until what was it, 89, I think, that Batman with Michael Keaton came out. And that
Yes.
was, but before that, I mean, it's certainly, if anybody is a younger millennial or a Gen Z for sure, it would blow their mind to know that you just basically could not get a movie made based on a comic book character other than Superman and Batman. You couldn't get a real one,
Nope.
Certainly Marvel couldn't, even though they, I think, had the better, comics.
Yeah, well, that was at the time. It was all Stan Lee could do is to get TV properties out
Right.
there. And yeah, the Hulk. They did that one-off Doctor Strange movie.
Yes.
Which wow.
Yeah, wow. They had Nick Fury that they made with later that starred David Hasselhoff as Nick Fury. Famously, they Roger Corman made the Fantastic Four, and they thought they were actually going to make a real. They thought they were making an actual movie people would see, but really it turned out that the people who owned the properties, the rights to the movies, they were going to lose it if they didn't make something with it, because they didn't make anything with it. So they just paid $1 million for Roger Corman to make this movie, and they were never planned on.
No, they just wanted the rights for down the road, but they still lost the rights. So
yeah, and actually, I don't know if you've ever seen that version, but it's the most in line with what the actual Fantastic Four is. And their story and stuff. I mean, they had to change a few things because they didn't have any money, and even if they had the money, they didn't have the technology to make it look as real as what they could later. But yeah, so it was nearly impossible to get a movie made off of even a popular comic book. So Swamp Thing was something I was like, yes, Swamp Thing, and it turned out to be
Yeah, because once again, the budget was a nickel. So
right.
yeah.
I mean, you got to see Adrian Barbeau, but that was about it. Next on my list is a little movie called Night Shift. Ever heard of it?
Night Shift. Is that the comedy?
Yes.
Oh, I remember that coming out. Did not see it.
I did. I was a movie nut, and my grandfather would, when he would go to work, he'd drop me off at the movie theater, and I'd watch every movie they had basically as many times as I could.
Was that PG? Was that PG?
I think that's rated R. It had to be rated R because it's got titties in it pretty well.
I was gonna say, and also, why would it be rated R? Explain to our dear audience the premise of the movie.
Okay, so it was basically Ron Howard's second official directing job, as far as I know. He'd made one before, but it was a much smaller one. This one, he had his buddy Henry Winkler, who played the Fonz, obviously, and a little known actor that not many people had heard of. His name was Michael Keaton, and this was his big role as Bill Blazejowski. Basically, Henry Winkler works in a mortuary. And he gets Michael Keaton gets hired, and Henry Winkler is just the opposite of the Fonz. He is absolutely a nerd. He's afraid of everything. He doesn't want to take any risks. He gets hives, and Michael Keaton.
He's a little neurotic.
Yes, and Michael Keaton shows up, and he's a lunatic. He's full on Michael Keaton at this point. No thoughts of being a serious actor down the road, no concept of how big he would get as Batman or anything like that. And that basically he's like, hey, we can make a whole lot of money by using our mortuary to be a brothel. And so they would let people come in. They worked in the city, and nobody came down there. So I guess I don't know, was he a mortician or was he just run the place? But either way,
yeah. He was like, whoa, this is not a good idea. We're going to get in trouble. And of course, then they make bank.
Yes, they make tons
however
of money.
long, because I don't really know. I didn't watch it.
Yeah, it's Shelley Long, who played Diane in Cheers.
Oh, okay.
She played the main prostitute who they ended up. Yeah, I think Henry Winkler ended up falling in love with her because his wife was a stick in the mud, kind of one of those. We've only been together for 6 years, so you can't touch my boobs or anything like that. And so Henry Winkler was blue balling it. I remember one of the main things I remember about it is when Michael Keaton is first hired, and he comes in there and he sees a picture of Henry Winkler's fiance. And he's like, "Oh, who's this?" And he goes, "Oh, it's my fiance, Charlotte." He goes, "Oh, nice frame." And then sets it down. I always thought that was a nice little backhanded thing. But so they had Van Halen in it. You Really Got Me is in it when there's like a fraternity party that they have in there. So it's a little off the hook, but it's one of those Henry Winkler learns to unwind. He falls in love with Shelley Long and all is well. But definitely Michael Keaton as Bill Blazkowski is a standout, and it launched his career big time.
And then he would play kind of a sleaze character in movies for a while, or comedic roles.
Comedic role. I mean, he was not long after that. He was Mr. Mom. He was in what was the one where it was the Japanese? They lost their American cars. Yes. Anyway, so but he was not. Nobody knew who he was until a couple movies later. But I remember him. But anyway, Night Shift's a cool movie, and it's definitely has like plenty of boobs and stuff in it. So
does it hold up to today, or is it a relic?
I mean, it's still funny. It's still funny. I haven't seen it since the 90s, but I mean, depending on what your disposition is, if you have a problem with some nudity and sexual humor and that kind of thing, then you don't want to watch this. If you're cool with it, dive in. It's pretty fun. But I mean, Ron Howard is one of the best directors of his generation, and this was his real first pre-Splash. That matter of fact, I think his next movie was Splash. So,
and I believe this got good reviews and did fairly well. I'm not saying it broke records, but I don't think this was a bomb.
No, I don't think so. I liked it. So. But
so I'm just saying Henry Winkler, he does not get a lot of film parts. Well, at least he didn't back then. But it is one that you got to catch it. I'm gonna watch it. I need to watch this movie.
Yeah, let me know what you think. I thought it was good, and it was very strange to see the Fonz as a neurotic new. I'm used to seeing him as like super cool Italian guy, and then you see him as like this neurotic, afraid of everything, Jewish New Yorker, and you're like, this doesn't seem right, but it shows you what a good actor he actually is.
Yes, he was in like Yale drama school, so no slouch.
Next on my list is the start of an 80s revolution. Basically, it's First Blood with Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah. Anyway, so I was thinking I've seen that one a gazillion times on after renting it. I don't remember whether or not I don't think I saw it at the theater, but I wanted to see it. But it was one of those where I didn't have family who was going to go, "Hey, I'm going to let you see this R movie."
Right. I didn't see it at the theater. I saw it on HBO. Again, like you said, most of these are going to be on video or HBO because the rated R, and this one, wasn't Rocky. Let's just put it that way. If you haven't seen First Blood, it's great. I know that if you haven't seen it and you've only seen the Rambo movies, you probably think it's like Rambo, but it's not like Rambo. It's a much more grounded.
Yeah, it's a drama. It's not just action movie.
Right. Funny little tidbit. I saw an interview with Sylvester Stallone, and he was talking about making First Blood. And when he was writing it, he had a lot of like one-liners and just things that he said when he would make a kill or whatever. And then when they were filming it, he started realizing this is dumb. I can't do this. So he just basically told the editor, anytime I do that, just take it out. I have to take out everything that I say in here, basically, for him to be more of he wasn't a totally silent protagonist. But he was a man of few words until the end, where he talks about Johnny's fucking legs, his fucking legs. Remember that? Mm-hmm. Was crying my eyes out.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a time in 1982 where it was kind of around when the war movies glorifying the American soldiers and stuff that you saw in the 40s, 50s, and 60s had been turned on its head because of Vietnam. So they had. It was starting to become sympathy for the Vietnam veteran at this point, after Ronald Reagan became president, and then there was a, swell of patriotism and stuff. People started seeing that these soldiers were treated unfairly when they came back home. They weren't treated like World War II soldiers. So First Blood is kind of along those lines. He's just going through the town trying to bring the his buddy's medal after his buddy had died. And
I think he was going also trying to find the guys from his platoon, and he would find out more often than not, tragically, that they had already died.
Right. They'd Agent Orange, or they'd killed themselves, or whatever the case. And Brian Dennehy, who I always liked, is a sheriff who's basically like, we don't need your kind. And then Stallone didn't take kindly to that. But so it's like you said, it's more of a drama, not the over the top explosion fests that the other movies, Rambo and Rambo 2 and 3 and whatever, became.
Yeah, First Blood, I don't know if it had nominations at the awards shows that year, but I'm pretty sure it did.
Yeah, it was
because it was
deep.
Considered more of a drama than anything else, and rightfully so.
Right. It was deep. It was a deep movie. And next on my list is one that I saw many times at the theater, and you'll laugh at me for this, knowing what kind of guy I am, but it's Annie.
Really?
Yes, I saw it at the theater a whole lot. My cousin Kim, like I said, my grandfather would drop me off at the movies, and my cousin Kim, I love her, and she was into it, and so she lived right next to him, and so we would go all the time and just go at like 11 o'clock when they started, and my grandfather would pick me up at 5:30 or 6 or whatever, and we just watch it again and again and again. Love that movie.
Wow. To this day I haven't seen that.
I know Tim Curry's in it.
I know. I need to see this.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's a musical, but I mean, there's a reason why the play, or the musical play, and the movie has been revered and loved for decades.
Right.
And Carol Burnett, she's in it too.
Is she?
Yeah, she's like the mean orphanage woman, and I was just like, holy cow, Carol Burnett is mean. She was mean in this one, which was so opposite from what.
That's the one that leads into It's a Hard Knock Life or something.
Yes. Okay. The music in it's great. The dancing, all of it's very, very well done. And in a little bit of a different vein, that year you had Tron.
Oh yeah, Tron. I for some reason in recent years I was thinking that movie had to been like from like 1980. I don't know why, because I guess I was thinking it's primitive by what we think of in standards today, but yet it
blew my mind.
Yeah,
I saw it at the theater. I was like,
wow.
But
it's the thing. It's like somehow I thought that was further back, but it was actually in the 82.
I thought, I think maybe part of it was because Jeff Bridges, who plays the main guy, he kind of looks like he's in the late 70s at this point.
Okay.
Yeah,
maybe
so
that's it.
Yeah. So the gist of Tron, if people haven't seen it, is that Jeff Bridges is a game programmer, and I can't remember who. David Warner is.
I was going to mention David Warner.
Yeah, he's in it. He was the bad guy. He was the business partner who had been like embezzling or whatever from their company, and then he did something basically like a 3D printer in reverse and just scanned Jeff Bridges and ended up putting him in the computer, and he's not like in a video game in the computer. He's in the computer, and it's like it's own world. And the way they did it using reflective tape, and it was the first like actual 3D animated movie with 3D animated stuff in it.
I think it actually had some of the earliest supposed computer generated effects. I don't know which ones they're referring to, but I have seen that somewhere that it actually did have computer graphics in it.
Did I just say that? What did I say it was?
You're saying it was how it was animated?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Sorry.
Is that what you meant? Like,
yes, computer animation.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I wasn't clear about that. But yeah, computer animation. The machines and the bad guys, the motorcycles, which are famous, those things were all done with computer animation, and it was the first time it was used like that. maybe in any way. Now, the people who, the humans in it, they had, uniforms on that looked all sparkly. And I remember they had a battle with basically Frisbees that if they're standing on this platform that has concentric circles in it, and you could throw the Frisbee. If they didn't catch it, if it hit one of the circles, it would disappear. And if enough of them disappeared, you fell to your death. It was cool. It's a very cool movie. It holds up today. I think you have to look at it in the light of its time period and the limitations of the technology. But the story itself is really cool, and things that people mention in the story that come across as, it's like his name is Bit, like computer bit, get it? And people be like, I don't, what? These are things that most people didn't understand. The most basic language that they would talk about was, names of things inside of computers, and they used them as characters in this. Pretty cool.
Yes. What was it? The central processor?
Yes. That was where he needed to go, I think, to fight David Warner.
Yeah. Well, basically, by seeing that movie, we may have actually seen that one at the theater. By seeing that movie, I probably learned less about computers. It took longer for me to understand what computers really like.
Yeah, because thanks Disney. They were the ones that made it. So next on my list is Conan the Barbarian. It stars this guy. I'm not sure if you've heard of him. Weird name, Arnold Schwarzenegger. You ever heard of this guy?
In passing. Maybe.
Yeah, he's probably going nowhere. Haven't heard from him since that movie, but it was of the sword and sorcery kind of things. That was definitely the biggest. And they ended up making, of course, a couple years later, the one with Conan the Barbarian 2, which had Wilt Chamberlain.
Oh, yes. Yes. I actually saw that one recently, and I was like, this is a turd. But
yeah, it's terrible. But Conan the Barbarian was very cool, and I had a bunch of Conan the Barbarian comic books. I say comic books, but they were really the like oversized kind, and they were illustrated by John Buscema, written and illustrated by an artist named John Buscema for Marvel Comics, which was phenomenal. And but they were very violent. They were not, they weren't Spider-Man. I'll put it that way.
Well, if you got the black and white Savage Sword of Conan magazine, those were more, they didn't have to worry about Comics Code Authority. They could actually show gore in that.
That's what I was talking about. That's it.
Yeah.
Savage Sword of Conan. Loved them. I have a couple.
I'm just saying, but
for sure.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, so kids, like, it's not the color comic that Marvel put out every month.
Right.
It's the black and white.
Definitely not. I mean, Eater of Souls and stuff like that. It's definitely Edgar Rice Burroughs level of, Conan is a head-splitting barbarian who's out to get the wenches and kill mages, and he does.
Yes.
But Arnold was born to play Conan the Barbarian, and he did a great job, and it was the start of his big-time career. It wasn't long after that Terminator came out, and all that. So we know who Arnold Schwarzenegger is, and that was the main start of him becoming a household name.
Yeah, I mean, if you knew of him from his bodybuilding, that's one thing. But
right.
But he was definitely not a household name.
Right.
What else was he doing? Oh, he did in the 70s. Did a really shitty version of Hercules.
Yes, and he also did a movie with Anne Margaret and Kirk Douglas, where he's a cowboy. He's like perfect. He's a perfect man, and Kirk Douglas plays a black-hatted villain who is a bumbling fool. Basically, it's very funny. I can't remember the name of it, but it was quite.
You may have described something I don't know about.
Yeah, it was great. You should check it out. It's very funny.
Cowboy Schwarzenegger, Kirk Douglas. I'll find it.
Yeah, you'll find it.
Yes.
So moving on, I only have a couple more to mention. One of them's not even on this list, but I saw it on another list. So the next one that a lot of people will know about is 48 Hours with Nick Nolte and Eddie Murphy.
Oh, 48 Hours. Yes. Yeah, another one I did not see. I think I've only seen parts of that on cable.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, Eddie Murphy, he started getting on a big roll at this point. This couple things Nick Nolte is trying to hunt down these two criminals that Eddie Murphy had done a job with, like robbing a bank or whatever, and he got caught. And it's a comedy, is a buddy cop movie kind of thing, but he's a convict, and Nick Nolte is a racist asshole who calls him several things, but convict is basically his friendliest. Like, come on, convict.
Yes.
But of course, by the end, Eddie Murphy endears himself to him somewhat, and I think they made another one called Another 48 Hours, which I don't think did quite as well. But Eddie Murphy was at that point way beyond Nick Nolte as far as his career goes.
And I believe that's where Nick Nolte starts doing his grizzled persona.
Yeah, because before that he was like, good-looking guy, whatever, supposedly.
Yes.
And then this one,
even in 1992, he's considered the sexiest man alive, according to People magazine, I believe.
Yes, People magazine, because they know.
Like, why? I mean, yeah.
Right. And then so to wrap this list up, the last one, and they don't even have it on here, but it's a movie that's Golan and Goblis, I think was the name of the company that made them. I know you know who they are. They made a bunch of like cheap movies at the time, and this was a remake of a movie in Israel, and it's called The Last American Virgin. You ever heard of it?
I think I've heard of it.
Do you remember the curly-haired brunette that was in John Cusack movie where they're like skating or skiing, and she's a French exchange student, and it's the one where Van Halen there's like the stop motion claymation version of them.
Yes.
Yeah, Things Are Tough All Over or something like that. I can't remember the name of the movie, but anyway, she's in that. And thankfully she is, because she changed my opinion of her. But in this movie, oh my God, does she absolutely twist your heart. It's about these three friends, and she moves into their school. She's a new girl, and the coolest of the friends starts to date her, and he ends up getting her pregnant. And then the lesser friend, who's fallen in love with her, it's not very romantic to me, but he paid for her abortion. He pays for her. He just loves her to pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And then he does all these things for her. He ends up selling all of his radio equipment, and he walks to buy a ring. So he sells the equipment to buy a ring, and he shows up at a party with the ring, and he catches the two of them kissing. So she went right back to this guy after he did everything for him. And it's just heartbreaking.
Wow.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. And then he gets in the car and he starts driving away, and it plays a Lionel Richie song. It's just it's so sad. Now I'm not doing it justice, because it's
a good hit of the year.
Yes, it actually, it's a comedy. It's funny, except it has those elements to it. And when she betrayed him like that, I hated her forever, I thought, until I saw her in the John Cusack movie. I want my $2. That movie. And
yeah. Wow.
So
yes, that's a dramedy, I guess.
Yes, it's a dramedy
of its day.
Yeah. So that, we didn't even mention ones like Silent Rage and, with Chuck Norris, and, there's other ones that came out. Of course, those weren't the only movies that came out, but that's just like popular movies.
That's the only movies that came out.
Right. They were movies that came out.
Yeah, these were the only movies that came out. No one else in the world made movies.
We're not even mentioning anything about. I mean, we've gone through like A Tour and like 4 movies they did on Riff Tracks and Mystery Science.
Did we even mention Poltergeist?
No.
Good God!
Didn't even mention Poltergeist.
No, we didn't even mention that one.
Golly, Neds.
I know. I mean, now that maybe have to be its own episode.
That may, yeah. Look, yeah, horror story. We'll figure it out. We're about to run out of time here, folks, so we're going to wrap it up and say, if you haven't seen any of these movies, or any that you've missed that we mentioned, just check them out. Probably they're on Netflix or
Google
Amazon.
It, man. They're somewhere.
Do the Google thing that you kids are doing nowadays and check it out, because there's some really good stuff. They don't all have to be E.T. And in our next episode of the Rusty Playground, Maddie and I are going to have a deep dive in 2 of our favorite movies that both came out in 1982. They came out on the same day in 1982. Matt will be covering
Blade Runner, and Vannyboy will be covering
John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yes, John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yes, masterpieces.
Yeah, Matt. Yes, I was going to say revolutionized both genres.
Yes, lots of this stuff was junk, and those two movies were not junk, although The Thing was not very well received or thought of, but through time, that's changed.
Kind of the case for both, but we'll get into that.
We'll get into that. And until the next episode where we talk about that, he's been Mattyman.
And he's been Vannyboy.
And you've been listening to The Rusty Playground. Peace out.
Yes, peace out.